How do we judge the morality of our actions? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is the podcast arm of Viri Christi. Viri Christi is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help young men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at virichristi.com. All right, fellas, this is the Intro to Moral Theology, episode 16. Okay, hard to believe we're already 4 months into this thing. Last week, we talked about the steps of a human act. And I encourage you guys to kind of think through, or try to coach you guys a little bit on what steps go into making good choices so that before you have to make big choices, you kind of have a real methodical way of going through it. And then when you make choices, if they go really well, you can look back and say, oh man, I see where things went well there. If they don't go well, sometimes they're not going to, you can look back and identify what went wrong. Okay, so we talked about that last week. The last thing we're going to turn our attention to when it comes to moral decision making is judging the morality of human acts. Now, principally, I'm not going to focus as much on judging other people's acts, which is what most of us want to jump to, but really more looking at our own. But I thought it would be important to just answer kind of one objection out of the gate, because every time I teach this comes up all the time, is when I talk to guys about judging people's actions, they'll say, well, didn't Jesus say we're not supposed to do that? Okay, the answer is no. Okay, Jesus did not say we're not supposed to judge. Now, Jesus did say, and he warned us big time, to not make rash judgments, okay? Not to be harsh when we judge other people. Because Jesus knows, as I'm about to teach you guys, that when you judge a person, to judge them fairly and honestly, you have to know a lot about their situation. You have to know a lot about their intentions. You got to know clearly what they're doing. And a lot of times, if we're all honest, when we're aware of people doing things, we don't have access to all that information. And so he's not saying you can't make any judgments at all, because that would be ridiculous, okay? If you see someone sitting on the sidewalk smoking crack, it's not like Jesus is like, well, you can't judge that. Well, of course you can make a judgment. Smoking crack's bad for people. What Jesus would say is you should probably pump the brakes and be a little more gracious and charitable before you outline, all the dirty details of this guy's life, because you don't know them. So he'd say maybe be cautious with how judgmental you are, but you can still make judgments, okay? And so as we get into this podcast today, I think you guys will see why the case is that you should, pump the brakes a little bit. But that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, the sources, when you're judging the morality of an act, there's 3 things you have to look at. First is the object chosen, okay? The second is the intention, and the third are the circumstances. Now, when I say object chosen, I really try to not use much technical language in this podcast, but from time to time I still will. Sometimes you can't avoid it. What I mean by the moral object is it's what you're doing. Okay, what am I doing? What am I saying? What am I thinking? That's the what. So if I ask you guys, what am I doing right now? I'm recording a podcast. That's the moral object. Okay. The intention, as we're gonna get to in a second, is the reason why I'm doing it. And then the circumstances are all the other questions around it. So you can think of it this way. The moral object answers the what question. The intention answers the why question. And the circumstances answers the who, when, where, all that sort of stuff. Okay. All right. So let's jump in. Moral objects. The moral object, as I said, is the object that you choose to do. Now, one interesting question could be, is everything you do morally good and morally bad? Now, probably most of you guys want to say no, okay? And let me tell you why. Most of you guys want to say no because you want to say, okay, there's morally bad things like murdering innocent people or committing adultery or smoking crack, okay? There's things that are morally bad, clear cut, gone, done, okay? You guys might say there's morally good things, right? Like going to mass, like giving charity to the poor, telling the truth, like whatever, okay? You guys want to say that. And then you guys probably want to say there's morally neutral things, okay? Like brushing your teeth, okay? Or, going to bed at night or something, right? There seems to be a whole bunch of stuff we do throughout the day that they're not really moral at all. They're just kind of whatever, right? Just things you got to do. Eating breakfast, whatever. Okay. For Thomas Aquinas, he actually says everything we do is morally good or morally bad. Now, he does agree that there's some things like brushing your teeth that when you think about it, you're like, I don't know, that's just neutral. But he says Everything's morally good or bad when you actually choose to do it. Okay. The reason why he says this, he says, listen, everything we do is always done with an intention and it's always done within certain circumstances. So let's take brushing your teeth. Okay. If you brush your teeth in the morning after breakfast before you go to school, morally good. If you brush your teeth again at night before you go to bed, morally good. This is an absurd example, but let's say you guys forget to brush your teeth, but you just so happen to have your toothbrush and toothpaste in your pocket. So you pull it out during your first bell during math class and you slosh on the toothpaste on there and start brushing your teeth during math class. That would be morally bad because that's not what you're supposed to be doing right there and then. Okay. It's very rude. That's what he means. So he means that everything we do when it's done in actual context, everything we do is either getting us a little bit better or making us a little worse. Okay. So that's the first thing. Second, what in the world is an intention? An intention answers the why question. Like, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Guys, our intentions can make a good act bad. Okay. So you could do something good like give money to the poor. And if you have the wrong intentions, you could actually make that bad. Jesus talks about this in the Bible. He says the Pharisees, they fast, they pray, blah, blah, blah. Their intention is to impress people, not to impress God. Therefore, their actions are bad. Okay. So a couple rules with intentions. First, we have to keep our intentions good all the time. So make sure you guys are watching yourself saying, man, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for God's glory? Am I doing it for neighbor's good? Keep your intentions good. Don't let bad intentions sneak in. Okay. Second thing, and we'll return to this in the future. The ends do not justify the means. You guys may have heard that statement before. What that means is this. You can't say, well, I intend this really good thing, down the road. I'm going to do this bad thing in order to get the good thing, but that good intention will change the badness of what I'm doing. False. Okay. Your intention attaches to the means more so even than the end. Okay. So you can't do bad things for good result. You'll hear people in like abortion debates. They'll say, well, normally, it would be wrong to kill a baby, but in this situation, it's okay because we're trying to save the mom's life. False. You cannot intentionally and directly kill a baby to save someone, an innocent baby to save someone else. You can't do that. Okay. So ends do not justify means. All right. So first, moral object, got to be good. Second, keep your intentions good. All right. Third, the circumstances. Circumstances and consequences are secondary elements. So the most important is what am I doing and why am I doing it? But circumstances are important because they can raise or diminish our responsibility. Okay. The fact that you guys are teenagers, that circumstance does influence how responsible you are for what you do. Okay. I'm sorry, like I'm 42 and some of you guys are 16. Your brains are not completely developed. I don't mean that in any offensive sense. It's just biology. Okay. You're a little more impulsive than I am because I'm older than you are. That is relevant. This is why when people do crimes and you're really young like you are, those circumstances matter and you don't get punished as harshly. Okay. So circumstances do matter. Now they don't make bad things good. So you can't be like, well, yeah, I did this horrible deed, but I'm young, so it's, whatever. No. It'll lower your responsibility. It doesn't eradicate it. So it's not a get out of jail free card. Okay. You're still morally responsible for what you do, but it is relevant. Okay. Now, as you guys will notice here, because I'm gonna try to wrap up here. When we're making actions, guys, we need to keep track of what are we doing? Make sure we're doing things that are good in themselves and avoiding sins like, that are bad in themselves. Second, we need to keep our intentions good and we need to watch our circumstances because, okay, we don't want to have a good act become bad because, we're doing it at the wrong time, wrong place, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Also, and this will be my last thought before we sign off, when we're judging other people, don't fall into this idea like, well, you can't judge anybody. That's false. Okay. You're allowed to make judgments. You need to. But also notice here, now that we know what goes into making a good judgment, you can see why you should pump the brakes a little bit before you do it. So be a little gracious, be charitable with people, be patient with them, because a lot of times we don't know the intentions and circumstances for what they're doing. So that's the thought I'll leave you guys with. I hope you guys are having a blessed week. I hope you guys have a blessed week coming up, especially. And I'll look forward to talking to you guys next time. God bless.